Hey, it's Wyshtech, and today we are going to tear down and review this APS Phantom Extremis Mark II's gearbox. So take a moment and let me know down in the comments down below what you guys think of this rifle. And for you guys' convenience, there are timestamps down in the description. So if you need to skip around, go right ahead. Okay, here's what's going to be in the video. First thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and chrono this thing, just in case we can make any improvements. Next, we're going to rip out the gearbox and tear it apart. And then I'll inspect and give my personal opinion on each part. Then check compression, then check OEM shimming, then check OEM area engagement. And then we'll calculate gear and air volume ratios. And then we're gonna see if we can do a little bit of tune-up. Then after the tune-up, we're gonna chrono the rifle and see if we made any difference. That's the tune test. Here we go. Then of course, my final thoughts. Hell yeah. All right, let's get it. All right, here's the before tune-up chrono. We're gonna do 10 shots and record all of them and get an average. Okay, all right, now we got the baseline. I'm gonna go ahead and start tearing up this sucker. Hell yeah. And now, it's time to rip out the gearbox Wyshtech style. Hooray! Alrighty then, now that we got the gearbox out, let's see what's inside. And now for my magic trick. Damn, I'm good. Okay, what do we have here? Alright, we'll start with the compression system. I always like to start it off with that first. First, we'll check out the piston. Wow, that's really cool. So, we have a ported piston. And the piston itself is mostly polycarbonate with only one metal tooth. They did take one tooth away for possibly a little bit of bearing engagement. There is a ball bearing inside. So that's pretty interesting for a cheap airsoft gun. The nozzle is made of aluminum, and it does have an O-ring inside. Alright, moving on to the cylinder head. It's got a nice, thick aluminum nozzle here. Decent O-ring. I don't think you would need to upgrade this anytime soon unless it breaks. There's the padding on the back of this thing. And here's the cylinder head. Nice and shiny in there. Could probably use a polish, but it feels like aluminum. Overall, not bad. Moving on to the tap plate, it's nothing special. When I look at it closely, it may look like it on the camera, but it's actually not at a perfect angle. This is actually angled down quite a bit to pull your nozzle away from your bucking a bit, so it's got some good amount of flex in it, so that's good. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Starting with the bevel gear. It looks like your basic bevel gear. It has some shims on it. And yeah, got 1, 2, 3, 4 anti-reversal locks. Okay, we'll set that off to the side. We'll grab the sector gear next. So it looks like we got shims on both sides. Got a tappet plate with delayer chip. The standard sector gear. Alright, moving on to the spur gear. It's got shims on both sides. Looks pretty durable. Spur gear looks better than most gears I've seen. Alright, moving on. We'll move on to the anti-reversal latch. It's pretty standard and there's nothing special about that. And your typical spring. Yep, just regular old anti-reversal. Moving on to the bushings. I'm going to see if I can pop out one of those. So, they're in there pretty good. They're certainly not in there loose, so yeah, I am trying to push the bushings out. These are actually bearings. So bring out the calipers. And the bearings are 8mm. The gearbox does use 8mm bearings. Okay, moving on to the spring guide and spring. We got a irregular pitched spring. Here's the spring guide. It's got a ball bearing at the bottom. The spring guide is also a quick change with a really neat APS logo. Alright, moving on to the trigger mechanism. You got a solid trigger here, just like your typical any trigger that you normally get. Usually these triggers will pop out really easy. This one, I gotta tell you, it's in there real good, like nice and snug. So I got a feeling that putting this back together would be pretty simple. One thing I just noticed, got little grip ribs on the flat base. The electronics itself is your typical trolley system, and as you can see, this is something that you don't want to use a 3-cell or 11.1 LiPo battery because you'll burn out these contacts. I would stick to 7.4 and don't go any higher than that because you'll burn out these contacts unless you install a MOSFET. Then you should be fine. The cutoff lever here looks like it's made out of pretty decent aluminum, so I'd say this thing, the cutoff lever would last you a while. And we move on to the safety latch. It's got this little peg right here, which keeps it aligned and straight when you go to put it on safety, and it stays in safety. I have instances where these fail, but this one feels pretty rugged. All right, moving on to the gearbox. It's safe to say that this thing is reinforced. As you can see, it's got extra material around the gears. The thing that bugs me about this gearbox, it's not radiused. Of course, it's got its 8mm bearings, not bushings, but legit big ass bearings. If you notice these holes right here, it's for this guy right here. So the way the blowback works, the piston pushes it back, and then there's a return spring that fits right underneath here to return it to back to the forward position. That's what gives it its blowback feature. It's greased decently. It's not over greased or not greased enough in my opinion. There's a good amount of grease on there, as well as the piston and inside the cylinder, so it's lubricated pretty well. So if you guys made it this far in the video and you're enjoying the content and you're learning something, consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, which will help me create more content like this video for you guys. And let me know your opinion about this airsoft rifle in the comments down below. Alrighty, tidy lefty loosey. Now that the inspection is out of the way, time to check compression. Alright, checking compression. We got the nozzle on, cylinder head on, and now we're going to check it. Ooh. Yeah, that's pretty good compression. Nothing's moving. I got the nozzle all the way down though, so this rifle gets pretty good compression. Now we'll check the compression again with the nozzle out. So one little trick that I do is I put the tap plate off to the side. That way we can have the nozzle all the way out. Check the compression again, because we're testing the O-ring on that nozzle. A little bit of a leak, but hardly anything. So I'd say it's pretty good. Right out of the box, compression is really good. Alright, so the compression was good. Let's see how well this thing is shimmed. Shall we? So we're going to check to see how much wiggly waggly we got on these gears. Sector gear needs some shimming bad, as you can see. So definitely going to be shimming that guy. Now if I go over here and grab my pick, and we'll do the same thing to the spur gear. Spur gear is actually shimmed pretty damn good. Alright, moving on to the bevel. Bevel can use a tiny bit, like maybe a 0.1. So there you go. That's how APS shims their guns. Alright, now that we got that out of the way. Gee, I wonder how the AOE is in this thing. Let's check it out. Holy crap, that needs AOE bad. Bringing that a little closer for you guys to see. In order to get a good AOE, I'm gonna have to back this sucker off about that far. Alright, now that you guys know what the compression, shimming, and AOE is like on this APS gearbox, let's see what the gear and volume ratio is. Alrighty, tidy. We're here at airsofttech.dk, we scroll down to the gear ratio area, and we're going to find our gear ratio. So first we're going to enter the pinion, then bevel, spur, and sector gear teeth count. So starting with the pinion gear, we got 10, and then we'll come over here to the input side, and this is the bevel gear. On the input side, we got 30, and then the output was 10 teeth. Spur gear, we had 39 teeth on the input, 20 on the output, and then finally on the sector gear, we had 32. There you go. That's the gear ratio for this APS M4. Okay, now let's check that volume ratio. If we scroll down to the bottom, we'll enter our cylinder info. Diameter we got with the cylinder and the APS gearbox, we got 23.78. And the total compression length, we got about 42 millimeters. Alright, hit that enter, and that's our volume. Moving down, did some research and found out the stock barrel is a 604. Pulled out my measuring tape, measured out the barrel, and it came out to be 418 millimeter. We plug in the values, and what do we get? 1.56 to 1. A little undervolumed if you ask me. I like to see my volumes around 2 to 1. Hooray! There you go, and there you be. So off camera, I went ahead and did a full tune-up of this APS M4. Some of the things that I did was, I did a reshim of the gearbox, AOE correction, and I changed the cylinder to a full cylinder so I can achieve a 2 to 1 air volume ratio. That way, we can shoot heavier BBs for more accuracy and range. And that's all I did in the tune-up. So now, we're gonna go ahead and chrono this thing. All right, I'm gonna do 10 shots with 0.2 gram BBs. Here we go. All right, there you go, and there you be. Okay, so here are my final thoughts. So if you get this rifle and you're considering some upgrades for it, some of the things I would recommend is getting a high torque motor and MOSFET installed. That way you can get a faster trigger response and you can use 11.1 volt LiPo. Install a full type cylinder because of the barrel length that this rifle has, especially if you do an AOE correction. I also recommend a full teeth piston with this thing, since the piston that comes with it is just a polycarbonate. And that's just my preference. Go with whatever you want to go with. Definitely reshim it, because this APS gearbox wasn't shimmed very well. The last upgrade I would recommend is get a better hop-up bucking and a flat nub. The bucking that comes with it is just your standard bucking, and the nub, it looks more like a dog bone type. Comment below what you guys think of the APS gearbox. Share some opinions, and let me know if you have any video requests. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned a lot. If you enjoyed the content, consider liking and subscribing. Wyshtech, signing off. Bye.